welcome to the 1st of June. And this is the start of the Pride Month celebration. And also, welcome back to Be Extra Knitting. This is a knitting podcast where we celebrate everyone's creativity. So, knit what you love and also love what you knit. Um, Today, I'm continuing the interview series for the Pride Pot Mal Macalong, and I have another guest in for the interview today, and I will right away bring the guest to the stage and have the guests introduce themselves. So here we are. Hi, Rick. How are you for the second time?
Yes. Hi, good morning, and
Good
happy
morning.
Pride.
Happy Pride. Yeah, we already started talking for like 15 minutes or 10 minutes, and I realized I did not hit record. So here we are, repeating our first part. So I'm so sorry. But anyway, Rick, please introduce yourself to the audience. Yeah, to start with.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me to be here today. I am Rick. I am the owner and creator of Whimzeestitches Designs here in New Orleans, Louisiana, which is where I'm based. But I'm not originally from here. If you can't tell by my speech, but I do not have a Southern accent. But anyway, I grew up in New York, and Whimsy Stitches is something that I started unofficially in 2014 as I was kind of developing my knitting and dabbling in a whole new world of creativity. And but creativity runs in my blood. My mom is a great sewer and a quilter, seamstress. My Her father was a suit tailor. He knew how to do those things in Poland before they moved back to the United
Oh.
States. And my aunt on my father, so my father's sister was also a seamstress and um, a very accomplished sewist as well. So it comes from both directions in my family. So it's only natural that I have this in my blood. Um, and I've always been kind of a sewer, throughout my life, creating home decor, curtains and pillows and slip covers and all kinds of things that, I never would hire out for those things in the different places that I've lived. I've even made stuff for friends of mine and saved them a bundle of money, but
Mm-hmm.
which I adore and I love. But I finally am in a place in my life, I guess, in my, I don't want to call it the halfway point, but for some reason, when you reach your 50s, you think you're at a halfway point. But it might be beyond the halfway point for all I know.
Well, hopefully
So,
halfway or last point, Yeah.
yes, but so I have been doing, making project bags and hand dyeing yarn for just about 9 years now.
Okay.
Bags is really where it started, and then over the years, I've kind of dabbled in yarn dyeing, and now I have that is also an aspect of my business as well. Um,
Yeah.
so, just a brief history background on me. As I said, I grew up in New York. It was the first 30 years of my life. You know, Creativity was something that was always around us. I was the first in my family. I have two older brothers, first in my family to get a college degree. I also
Oh.
have my MBA, and I worked in IT for a while, as well as in corporate America. It was
Mm-hmm.
very dissatisfying,
Mm-hmm.
to say the least.
Mm.
As they say, money can't bring you all kinds of happiness. It doesn't, even though it can be very fulfilling and rewarding financially.
Right.
Sometimes that is not something that perhaps is fulfilling everything in your life. So I also as part of growing up, being different and gay, but not having the opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
be as open about it, also was a challenge. So I found when I was traveling for the corporate position that I was in, it was also a very coming of age, let's just say, sort of experience.
Uh-huh.
So I traveled throughout the United States, and I visited many, many, many places here, many states and cities and places. Met lots of different people,
Yeah.
and eventually I traveled to New Orleans several times, and I actually met somebody here, and it
Ah,
kind of turned into a love. And I moved here to people always ask, why did you move to New Orleans?
I was
And
gonna
my
say.
answer was love.
Okay.
And so that is why I ended up here.
Okay.
I gave up corporate America and, 6-figure salary and
Uh-huh.
all of that in, early 2000, and all because of love and to live, my true authentic self. So that's how I ended up here. That aspect or that chapter has closed.
Right.
Um, but that's okay. We move on in life and we develop other things and other joys.
I think it's amazing that, you pursue your own happiness, whatever form it is, right? Some people find happiness in sustainability of the way of life or financial independency or artistic freedom, right? So if you can find a balance in those, it's amazing to have. So I truly admire you and everyone who can figure that out and make that work.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I think I've always been a risk taker in
Okay.
some sort of way. I have no problem, kind of taking on risk. Although I probably am not, you know, I say that off the cuff, but in many ways, I'm not a risk taker, but I guess I am because I've done that so many times now that, and you know what, it works out. The more when you put something, energy and efforts into something, you will get that equal amount, if not more, back.
Mm-hmm.
Those that don't put any effort or energy towards something, they expect a lot of things to happen, but they're not getting the results. And it's because they're not giving it the energy that it truly
Of
needs.
course. Of course.
So, that's why I think, everything I've ever started or been a part of or do I put a lot of effort and energies into it. And I like to kind of get the benefits of that because it's very satisfying. It's
Yeah.
satisfying to have the knowledge of things.
Talking about putting effort on things, you are more prepared than I am in celebrating the Pride Month with your Pride
Yes,
garment.
yes.
Talk to me more about
So,
your whatever you're wearing.
okay, so I am wearing a gift from knitting friends of mine that I met. This is a ginormous
Oh,
pride
that's beautiful. Uh
colored
huh.
shawl. And it is
Yes.
I think it's the Boneyard shawl from Stephen
Okay.
West, but
Okay.
it's been expanded and they just kept knitting it for each color.
Uh
Um,
huh.
and so these are friends of mine, and I'm gonna try and put this back on, but it is getting a little warm in here. But that's okay. I will survive. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, cue music. and, but these friends, I this was a group of ladies that I met at attending my first ever knitting retreat, and that was back in.
Which one was that?
This was Into the Wool, and it was in
Oh.
Crossville, Tennessee, and it was
Okay.
99 women and me.
S-
Um,
you make
and
it even.
yes.
Yes.
So it was my first ever knitting retreat, and the only reason of why I knew about it was from a podcast, a knitting podcast that I had been watching
Okay.
when I started to learn how to knit. And so the podcast, I can't remember the name of their podcast, but the podcasters were Daniela Richardson and Allie, and I forgot Allie's last name. Crafty Allie is how she goes by
Uh huh.
on her Instagram and stuff. But anyway, they they had a podcast. I think it was a weekly podcast or somewhat like that. And
Uh-huh.
I would just enjoy just watching them and see what they were working on.
Yeah.
And they mentioned this retreat. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, okay, well, let me message them. And so I messaged them on Instagram to find out more about this retreat. They sent me links. I contacted the coordinator and I said, hey, I am interested in attending your retreat, but I am a male and I don't see anywhere in here that what's the story with
Specify.
that? Because,
Mm-hmm.
the housing there it was like a camp for
Oh
gymnastics or
boy.
something. So it was a lot of dormitory
Oh.
style,
Okay.
housing. And I says, well, how, how would this be handled? And, so I had a lot of questions, obviously. Um, it all worked out. I had a private room in one of the buildings that was for like the coordinators, which they had, smaller rooms and
Uh-huh.
bathroom and all that kind of stuff. And it worked out.
Uh-huh.
So the first year I attended, I met these ladies, and we all struck up great friendships and conversation. And you find your people, you find
Of course.
your core, who you get along with, or fairly quickly, I think. So the second year I was there, they presented this to me, and
Oh.
I was very happy to receive it, and yeah, so that's kind of where it all begins, and it's really even Whimzeestitches kind of begins with that whole thing too. So
Ah.
I did not know how to knit. I knew how to crochet as a child.
Right.
I kind of dabbled in it. Grandma showed me how to do that. She was my mom's mom, so this is my maternal grandmother. She crocheted Afghans for everybody, all of us grandchildren, and everybody. So, she was always doing that, at home or wherever she was. I do remember many a trips to Woolworth or later on it was Ben Franklin's, was these big box kind of retailers. And,
Oh.
that's where you bought your yarn because there was no such thing as,
As
beautiful merino wools and
right.
blends and, mohair yarns and all this kind of stuff that we work with today. So, I knew how to crochet the basics.
Uh-huh.
And, fast forward past everything else that happens in life for, 30 plus years. And here I am in New Orleans and I'm like, I want to pick up yarn again. I want to, you know, I get the advertisements from Joann's and it's enticing. You walk down the aisle and you're like, look at all these colors and, and all these, you know, looks and feels of yarn. Oh, look, they even have fur and things. And I'm like, I want to make stuff. So I picked up the hook. I started doing crochet again. But unfortunately, carpal tunnel,
Ah.
doesn't really allow for that movement very much and it
Uh-huh.
aggravates it. I had that fixed in one hand. This hand I haven't fixed yet, but I'll get there. Um, and well, that's it. That comes from the career in IT and
Right.
typing and a mouse. And so,
Makes sense.
repetitive strain from all of that, you know, but also from sewing too, scissor work and different things, will aggravate those kind of symptoms. But so I picked up
So
that crochet hook. I was crocheting and I said, I need to know how to knit. I'm just not understanding why I can't, learn how to knit. So I was a part of a quilting group with some quilting ladies because I was quilting at the time, thinking that was a good, evening filler, weekends, that kind of
right.
thing. And of course, I was doing that. And one of the ladies there invited me to her stitch group at the coffee house. And she says, well, we have somebody there and, they'll probably teach you how to knit. And so I went one time and introduced myself and I was in there with my looms because I was loom knitting. So,
Uh-huh.
because those were the things you could
You know,
find information about and go to the
right.
store and that's what you buy. And I think it was Martha Stewart had a whole big
Yeah,
she
I
had one that
remember.
had different pieces and I and I was like, "Oh my god, this is awesome."
Yeah, didn't she
And
have a line of yarn also? If I'm not
yes,
mistaken. Yeah. Okay.
she did have a
Anyway.
line of yarn.
Okay.
I think it was all made by the same company, but
Yeah.
Universal or one of those companies. And but she I think she did have some yarn out as well. And but anyway, I was so I went to the meeting and I says, "Is there anybody that would be willing to teach me how to truly knit?" And I said, "I have needles, I have yarn." And one of the ladies sat with me for a little bit. And she says, "This is how you cast on. This is how you knit. This is how you purl. Go."
Pearl.
And
And
she
this
says,
is
"You're
how
going to make."
you stick.
No, no, no. None of that was happening yet. And it still hasn't happened.
Oh. Okay.
Um, so I learned how to knit. I was knitting a washcloth. And the
Okay.
first washcloth I ever made, and of course, it is not square. It is all
Okay.
kinds of different shapes and sizes and holes and different things in it. But that did get me started, and
Okay.
and it took off from there. It became an obsession, and yeah, so it became an
How
obsession.
how or when did you find I call it bougie yarn or like natural fiber yarn? Where when did you make that transition?
Okay, so I discovered the podcast and I learned about that and the retreat. So prior to going to that retreat, I was, I was looking at these very early rudimentary kind of podcasts and different things and people sharing. And a lot of people spoke about the same kind of yarn companies or brands or types of yarns or different things. And I can't remember what year it was. It might have been 2013 or 14, maybe before that. Maybe it was even before that. Um, there was a yarn event that was happening in Atlanta, and it was called Stitches or Stitches
Oh yeah.
South or something,
I
or
heard
and
yes.
it and so I got in my car one day and for that weekend, and
Ah.
I drove to Atlanta, and it was my first ever really yarn conference or,
Okay.
knitting thing.
Uh-huh.
And I think I signed up for a class or two, didn't know too much of what I was going to learn.
Did you go
Um,
with anyone?
no, I went by myself because I
Okay.
knew nobody at that point. I had not, made any friends in this world. But I was just doing the basics and I didn't know anything about, finer quality yarns or things. So while I was there at the trade show, of course, there's all this yarn everywhere, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what the difference was between a merino or an acrylic. I just didn't know anything. But what I did know is I did like linen and things that had
Ah.
viscose or, that
Okay.
had a very soft hand to them.
Bamboo.
That I
Uh-huh.
did like.
Okay.
And I want to say there was a vendor there. I don't remember the name of the vendor. And the vendor
Yeah.
had these giant tables and bins of yarn.
Uh-huh.
And none of them were like labeled with any sort of brand, but they were colorful and different textures and different. And I was just drawn to them, and I bought a bunch of it. And I think it was sold by the pound or something, or they weight, by weight, and because you didn't know what you were kind of getting. And um, so that was kind of like my entry into the world of other yarns. But so it wasn't until I think a couple of years after that, because as I was learning from podcasts and different things, they would
Okay.
mention indie dyers and different things, and I got on with a subscription with Plucky Knitter at the time, and they had like a monthly subscription plan where you would get some yarn every month. And I think I joined their sock yarn club, and I got two 100-gram skeins of yarn, and it was a sock yarn every month. And so was coming and I was collecting, and I didn't know what to do with it. And that's kind of where it kind of started as far as, knowing other yarns.
Yeah.
And then I learned about others, that were makers and creators. And, it opened up a whole new
Oh, definitely.
obsession let's just
Yeah.
say, because I'm sitting in my craft room, which is my kind of my personal stash room, and I've got, you can't really see, but there's a cabinet here. There's another
Yes.
cabinet on that side of the room that is exactly the same size and shape. They're both stuffed full of yarn that is not my yarn that I dye, but other
Ah,
people's yarn. So before I even started my business, I was a curator
curator. I love that.
of yarn, and definitely have exceeded the quantity that I can knit with, before I kick the bucket.
Ah.
Um, there's also some big box retail yarn in here as well that's I'm staring at on that side of the room, but it's way over there. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, so from yarn curating or curator into yarn dyer, how did that happen? And how did you
Well,
learn? Yeah.
so excuse me as I reach for something that fell way over there.
Oh
So
yeah.
when I went to this retreat, this knitting retreat back in like 2012, 2013, somewhere around there, I, I didn't know anything about anything or anybody or what they were doing, just enamored, taking it all in.
Right.
And of course, everybody's got, these cute bags that they're, putting their projects in. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I can sew a bag. It's easy. A lot of them were drawstring bags and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So I want to say that was 2013 that I did that.
Okay.
And because in 2014, I actually launched my Etsy shop. So I had created some project bags by then.
Okay.
Um, and they were just a simple kind of drawstring bags, and they weren't very fancy at all. I could probably dig out a few in one of these baskets over here, but I'm not going to do that. Not that I'm ashamed of them; they're just I don't want to dig
Somewhere.
for them. But anyway, they were just a simple drawstring, two pieces of fabric, a drawstring, and you've got a bag.
Hmm.
So I made a few for myself after I attended the first retreat, and I brought them to the second retreat. And I gave a bunch to the coordinator as door
Ah.
prizes because
Aha.
they would get lots
Makes
of
sense.
donations of different things,
Yeah.
um, and so I made a bunch of different bags and did that for door prizes, and they appreciated it, and it was great. And so, but people liked them so much they started contacting me and said, "Hey, will you
Ah.
make me a couple more, or will you do this, or will you do that?" Or and eventually
Wow.
it turned into me opening an Etsy shop because I needed some way to sell them.
Uh-huh.
And that's what I was doing. I was just kind of, I had already a huge stash of fabric from my quilting endeavors,
Right.
and I was like, well, let me start using some of this, and that's what I was doing. So I was just, instead of quilting, I was making drawstring project bags.
Uh-huh.
So somewhere around 20, early on in 2015, I, you know, I heard a lot of people talking about, bags, and, they just never knew what was inside their bags, what project was in that bag because you couldn't see through the fabric. So somewhere along the line, I started researching bags that had clear vinyl
Yeah.
sewn
Right.
into them. And I, of course, in my, the way I do things is I never do anything too simply. I spend a lot of time researching and looking and finding, answers to things because
Mm-hmm.
that's was my background was in solutions and providing
Right.
solutions
Like
and doing
IT.
analytics and blah blah blah. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I developed this bag, which is my clear drawstring project bag.
But by the way,
And
this is one of the giveaway for the make along that I'm hosting right now. But I will have more information. But yeah, I just got one of these from Rick last night.
yes,
Anyway,
and actually
continue.
just mailed it
Yes.
out to you today. So,
Thank you.
and of course, this one is in the Pride Rainbow colorway. I make
Yes.
this bag in lots of different fabrics,
Aha.
all available through my shop. But anyway, this is kind of where it started. This is the updated version. Early on it was
Yeah.
a little smaller than this and everything, but I settled on this size and this
That's
style, and
nice.
with a handle that can come off, and it has a drawstring at the top that has a little
Yeah.
cable pull lock on it. But
So,
also, you can still pull the yarn through the top and work on your project if you're kind of on the go or in the car or what have you.
oh, I
So
love that wrist
yeah.
handle. So, do you use regular sewing machine for the vinyl?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
Yes, everything I do on basically a regular kind of a sewing
Okay.
machine. I mean, I've got several machines, but
Yeah.
that is mainly what I use, and it works well.
Yeah.
You don't need any specialized kind of equipment to sew. You're basically just sewing. Vinyl is pretty much almost the same as a fabric. It's not heavier
Ah.
than leather, let's say.
Okay.
So it is really easy to sew through.
Okay.
Um, you do have to open your stitch width a little bit because you don't want to
Yeah.
make a very tight
Too
perforation
close.
in the vinyl because it will just
It
rip
will
out.
just break. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
So
So,
this is kind of
okay.
where it all started is bags and
So you
this
start
right
with
here.
bags. Okay. Very
Yep. I was
nice.
just making this bag. No
Okay.
other bags. This bag, the drawstring, the regular fabric, kind of all fabric drawstring bags.
And people are
And
loving it.
they were loving it. It's really where it all started. And
Yeah.
and so I think the third year I attended the retreat, I actually became a vendor. So I
Oh.
by then, so this was I think 2016 or so, maybe
Yeah.
17, 2016, let's just say.
Yeah.
I was a vendor and I had bags. It was this bag, it was other size bags. I have these are my other small type
Oh, I
bags that
love
I make,
that.
which is kind of a
Yeah.
clutch style.
Yeah.
Great for single. Um, oh, here's another clear bag with a
Projects.
different fabric. Yeah, single skein projects.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
These you can easily fit two skeins of yarn in here.
Yeah. And you can
This,
see what
without a
is in
problem.
it.
And yeah, you can
Yeah.
always see
Love
what's
that.
in there.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So you
so
were
that's
vending in there.
Yeah, so that's developed into other bags. These are my
Beautiful.
medium-sized bags, which are great for
Ooh.
shawls and that kind of thing. These are the zipper style. So but you
Yeah.
sometimes fun fabric on the inside. But that's kind of where it all started
Yeah.
with making bags and I loved it because I could sew basically for a living. Um, I wasn't doing this full time at the time, but that
S-
very quickly changed. So as I
Okay.
say, I don't remember if I've said this in this particular or in our before we started. But anyway, I'm kind of a risk taker. I
Yes.
kind of try to I like to dabble in a lot of different things and learn about it. But you know I don't know if I'm always on the perpetual search for, some joy or happiness or fulfillment or something. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is. Maybe it is an ADHD that I'm not aware of, but who knows?
Yeah.
But when I start something, I kind of jump into it like
Into it
2 feet, right
full.
into it, heavy, find out all the information I need to do, and then just develop that further. So I by let's see, 2014 is when I kind of started things. 2015, it kind of was starting to take off. By 2017, I was like, vending, and I was doing multiple, like I was doing like, other places I was vending at as well, because I found out more about that.
Right.
And I think I want to say by 2018, I was in this full time.
Wow.
I
Okay.
quit anything else
Quit
I
your
was
job.
doing.
Uh huh.
And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to put 100% effort into this.
Uh huh.
It's very difficult to run a business part time
Uh huh.
and think
Of
that you're
course.
actually going to make any kind of money in it.
Yeah.
Um, it's very difficult to do that because your time is
Yeah.
something that it has to come from somewhere. So if you're
Yeah.
working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday, well, where's your time? Your time is
Right.
your evenings and your weekends. Well,
Well.
if your evenings and weekends, then guess what? What do you sacrifice? You sacrifice your family or your friends or, your personal life or,
Your resting
whatever it is.
time. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
you tire out real quick.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's hard to do that. And when there's a demand, you either have to recognize that there's a demand and say, I'm going to answer that demand, or I'm not.
Right.
And I just went ahead and did. And it worked out. So, you know
So did you start your business on your own, or do you have a business partner?
no, it is all me.
Okay.
I am a solopreneur. I do everything
Oh
by
wow.
myself.
Yeah.
I don't really have help at all.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
There are boundaries that I have to have with
Uh
my
huh.
time and my efforts, and
Right.
how much I take on, because you can't accomplish it all. You can't. It's impossible. There's not enough time, effort, energy in the day to make everything happen. So there is sometimes I have to say no to things and no to requests. And I but as things evolve and change through time, and the different ups and downs of business and life in general, and the world, with a pandemic thrown in there, you
Yeah.
learn a lot of different things. You learn how to adapt. You learn how to change on a dime. You have to. And if you're not willing to do
Yeah.
that, you won't be able to
Evolve.
change
Yeah. Yeah.
your happiness, really.
Yeah. Okay. So you have your business. So your business is mostly online, or do you also supply for your local yarn store now?
Okay, so what I do, primarily I'm an online business. I would say
Okay.
that's really where most of my products are available. But I also do in-person shows. So I'll do
Ooh.
various events throughout the year, depending on their locations. Prior to the pandemic, there were many more yarn events and yarn shows that I could
Uh huh.
travel to. Things have changed since then.
Yeah.
Some companies have gone out of business, like Stitches, they're out of business.
Ah.
And so some of your larger events are,
Yeah.
um, a little more difficult to be a part of, but I am a part of several of them, and I vend at DFW, which is Dallas Fort Worth Fiber Fest, every year, and
I
that's in
heard of
September
them.
now.
Yeah.
SAF, which is the Southeastern Animal Fiber Festival, that's in October.
North, is that
Um,
in
that's in
Carolina?
Asheville, North Carolina.
North
Yes.
Carolina. Yeah.
Great
Okay.
events, great,
Uh
great,
huh.
great events. I've been a vendor at both for 6 or 7 years now.
Uh huh.
And so those I do in person at those types of events. I do some things in
Okay.
the springtime that in Tennessee, there's an event that I do. I've done 2 years in a row now.
Uh huh.
That's in the springtime. There were others, but I have been focusing more on local yarn store trunk shows now.
Ah. Okay.
So I am finding that it's a little more rewarding for me personally to do the trunk shows, because it's a smaller environment.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
can bring my products there, showcase them, have time to speak with people. And the yarn store also benefits, because they're having
Bringing
special
people.
guests, and
Yeah.
and so forth, so on. I'm also doing some mail out trunk shows and drop off trunk shows, where I drop
Okay.
things off or mail stuff out, and then it comes back to me after a period of time. That's kind of, I don't really do wholesale business, although I'm dabbling in that at this point, let's
Okay.
just say.
Yeah.
Um, it, 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 as I said earlier, you can't do it all. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to do wholesale, something else has to give.
Right.
So perhaps shows will have to give, or the bigger shows will have to give. I will say this: traveling is not always fun.
Uh huh.
Traveling is expensive.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, it's nice. It's great that I want to do these things and people want me at their shop and that kind of a thing, but
Right.
sometimes it's not feasible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of, for this year, I kind of filled my calendar a little too full for these trunk shows in the first half of the year. So I was finding myself kind of a little overwhelmed at this point in time. But next week I'm doing my last trip for this for the first half of the
This.
year.
Okay.
So I'll be home for 3 months after this, which is
Oh,
I'm going to be
nice.
like, oh my! That doesn't mean vacation. It doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing because I
Oh
have
no.
two big shows in the fall to prepare for,
So
and
what are
so
those? The big show, if I may ask.
that's going to be the Dallas Fort Worth Fiber Fest and the SAF. So those are
Oh,
my
okay.
two biggest events every year.
Okay.
They're just a month apart from one another, and you've got I don't know, 5, 6, 7,000 people coming to each of those events.
Okay.
They're large events. They're multi-day. They're 3-day events. They
Okay.
offer lots of classes and
Yeah.
vendors. Probably 100 or more vendors at each of them. They're fairly large events. So if you've ever
So
been to, I don't know if you've ever been to Rhinebeck
I was gonna
for the New York
ask.
State Sheep and Wool.
Yeah. So
Um,
Seth
it,
is a week after Rhinebeck usually, or
It's
2 weeks,
usually yes. It usually
right?
is. I
Yeah.
think this last year and this year they're both scheduled for the same weekend, but
Or
that doesn't
yes.
happen. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen a lot,
A
but
lot.
it just sometimes. I mean, it's all scheduling and just the
Yeah.
way things work out. It's not like one sabotage the other or anything of that nature. It just sometimes this is how things happen because of scheduling. It's
Yeah.
you know these
Yeah.
places hold lots of events. It's not just these yarn events. They hold lots of different events there. So
Oh, of course.
it all
Yeah.
just depends on what else is happening throughout the year and timing and
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, I mean, as the only person doing
That.
everything in this
Right.
business,
Yeah.
and also still wanting to have a life and free time and time to knit for
For
myself. I
fun.
do knit.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
knit. That's
Yeah.
one of my recent creations, which is the cable
Ooh.
trellis. The
Okay.
cable
We
trellis
have to
shawl
talk
for
about that. Mm-hmm.
That's a Stephen West design.
Okay. Very
And it was
nice.
I ordered a kit from his shop in
Okay.
Amsterdam, and it has his
Nice.
bicycle wool and it also is
Ooh.
a
Let
spin
me
cycle yarn,
make
and
you
it's a
bigger.
DK weight.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. Remove myself.
Okay. Yeah, this is a DK weight
Very
shawl.
nice.
It was a
Uh-huh.
fun knit. As I said, it was a kit. It was part of his, I think, his Hyper knit along series.
Okay.
Um, so I
Have
do
you
knit for
visited
myself.
have you
No,
visited his store in
I have
Amsterdam?
not been
Okay.
to Amsterdam yet. It's on my list. It's on my bucket
Okay.
list to travel.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to go one day. I just don't know when that will be. Um,
Okay.
so,
Hopefully there
because
is
I do
a
love
knitting retreat that will go that area. So
maybe
that will
one
be
day,
nice.
or maybe make my
Yeah.
own retreat. I do love to
Oh, there you
travel.
go.
I
Okay.
really do love to travel. I My last big trip I took was December of 2022, and
Okay.
I kind of rewarded myself, and I went to Barcelona for a week, and
Oh,
then I went
nice.
on a 2-week transatlantic cruise that started in Barcelona and it
Uh-huh.
ended up in New York City. So, and that was for my
Oh.
birthday that year, and it was my 50th birthday happened during middle of the pandemic in 2020. So I
Okay.
wasn't able to celebrate my 50th. And
Mm.
so that was my kind of my celebratory cruise 2 years later.
Okay.
And so I basically spent a lot of time just but I love to travel. I had been to Greece the year before for a wedding,
Ah,
actually, with
love
my
Greece.
ex-boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And I've been to other countries in Europe, and then I've done a lot of cruise travel. When I moved to New Orleans and lived with my partner at the
Uh,
time, we would
uh-huh.
take a cruise like once a year. So we've done a lot of cruising around the U.S., the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, Alaska. I've been to Colombia and a couple of the
Uh-huh.
islands off the northern coast of South America. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to travel.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a risk taker, so I have no problem. That last trip I took in December of 22, I did alone. I went
Okay.
with nobody. I
So
packed
you
my
flew
bags,
to
went by myself, and did it
right.
all.
So you flew to Barcelona, and then you aboard the
I boarded a
boat,
ship there. Hmm.
and then you go to New York. How many days was that?
The actual cruise was 2 weeks, so 14 days.
Okay, okay,
But we stopped in seven different places.
okay,
We stopped along, it wasn't
yeah,
just 14 days in the ocean. The
okay,
longest stretch of time in the ocean was, I think, 5 days straight. It was 5 days from the last port we
okay,
stopped in was Madeira,
okay,
Portugal. So that's
okay.
an island off the western
The,
coast of Africa.
yeah.
And from there, we beelined to New York, and
Okay.
it was 5 days,
Okay. Did you stop
which
to it?
which was wonderful because, believe it or not, we left Madeira, and the next 2 days it was 80 degrees and
Uh
full
huh.
sunshine. We were in the pool in December
On the boat. Okay.
on the
Okay.
boat. It
Yes.
just was warm enough for that to happen. But of course,
Okay.
after the second day of that, it went from 80 degrees to 32 degrees and freezing cold and
You
wind and
cannot.
waves and
Yes.
the Atlantic Ocean in the winter.
You cannot ask too much, right? Did
No,
you
it was
did you
fine.
did you stop by Porto or even Casablanca by any chance?
No, no, we
No.
did
Okay.
not. We did not that
Okay.
trip. That is, there are lots of places on this earth that I
So.
want to visit,
Oh
and I don't
yes.
know if I'll get to them all in my life, but I'm hoping to. I'm hoping
But
to.
it's fun to travel alone.
Yes,
Sometimes you actually meet people if you want to.
I honestly prefer it.
And you can decide what you want to eat easier.
Yes,
Like, all right, done. No one to
I
ask.
I found the freedom of not having to consider anybody else or any other schedules,
Yeah.
to be very freeing. It was
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. I could make my plans however and whenever I wanted. I could change my plans whenever I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. It is wonderful to be able to have the freedom to get up and leave at
Yeah.
your own will, because if you're not liking a situation, conversation, what have
Exactly.
you
Yes.
can just
I
leave.
am with you on that.
And these days, that is a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Oh
Um,
yeah, totally.
because the world has changed a lot,
I
and
know.
sometimes I say to people, perhaps the world hasn't changed in the best ways. It's we've gone in the wrong direction sometimes, but we're
Yeah.
not going to talk about that on
But we're
this
bringing
channel.
the positive vibe. We're
Yes,
yeah, we acknowledge there are problem everywhere, but like hopefully by bringing a positive vibe, we'll
yes,
we'll stay afloat.
yes.
so
So
so uh, b- I still want to know how you go into yarn dyeing.
okay,
Yeah.
so I always said to myself that I wasn't going to be a yarn dyer.
Uh-huh.
And I have to eat my words to everybody that I said that to, because, the reality of this world about owning a business or doing anything is you have to be able to adapt. And, um,
Uh-huh.
it- you know, I, as I said, things started with the bag business. It was
Yes.
sewing and making bags. There are only so many bags people will buy.
Uh-huh.
I was like, well, if I'm going to continue this business and continue making a living and things of that nature, I have to open my eyes to other things. And I really didn't know anything about yarn dyeing. It took me several years to kind of develop and hone
Figure
my
out.
yarn dyeing skills and
Oh.
understanding, and getting the equipment, and
Yeah.
carving out a space, and in my home for that. So
Yeah.
I have a dedicated room that is right next to me, that is my sewing room slash inventory room. So
Uh-huh.
in there is all of my all my fabric for creating bags, all of the
Right.
pieces, parts, interfacing, sewing machines, zippers, and large cutting table, and all the tools, and then storage along two walls, that is all basically yarn and bags that are made ready to
Mm.
be sold in the Etsy shop.
Mm-hmm.
Then outdoors, I have a laundry room that is kind of outdoor indoor. It's
Oh.
it use it it's it's an additional room onto my home, but
Uh-huh.
it's not like an indoor room. It has walls and windows and all that, but it's not insulated. So it's, it's kind of like a lack of better terms, kind of like, an outdoor room. But anyway, it's my laundry room, and so in my laundry room, I added a sink, and I have add more electricity, and I put tables and storage, and that's kind of where I do my yarn dyeing.
Okay.
And I think I started dyeing yarn somewhere around. I want to say I started dabbling in it somewhere around 2017 or
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Didn't know what I was doing. I really wasn't selling it. It was just kind of just,
Ah.
playing around.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was about a year later that I kind of launched my
Start.
yarn line.
Uh-huh.
And I just call it Whimzeestitches Yarn Co., keeping it under the same kind of brand identity. Um, and so that was around 2018, I think I launched. And and over the years, as I said, I've kind of developed, my techniques and skills, and speaking to others, and watching different things. There's all kinds of makers on TikTok and on Instagram and on
Yeah.
YouTube. And then also you develop your own techniques, what works for you.
Okay.
um, you know
Oh,
I'm not going to say it's without its challenges, because yarn
of
dyeing is
course.
very labor intensive.
Of course.
It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of lifting heavy. Yarn gets wet,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
water are
Right.
heavy.
Of
And
course.
anybody who thinks that, oh, must be so fun, and blah blah blah, yeah, talk to me after 7 hours of dyeing yarn in 95-degree temperature.
Oh
You
Lord,
know,
yes.
you're talking
In
about
New Orleans,
water
yes.
cooking and yarn
Mm-hmm.
cooking for hours of the day. Well, what is it? Produces heat. You you know it is hot,
You
and I live in
know,
New Orleans, and it's hot.
right? It does get hot. I remember. I mean, but hey, if you enjoy it, right? If it's something that you
you
really
know,
enjoy.
when you can create beautiful things,
Yeah. So, do you have? Oh,
rainbows
oh my God, that is
and other
beautiful.
rainbows
Of
that are,
course.
speckly rainbows, but, you create stuff, you create yarn.
That
Um,
is so cute.
I mean, this is out of my color wheel usually, but,
Okay.
I push myself to do things.
Hmm.
Um, I'm, probably
Oh,
more
I
of a,
love that in the middle. Yeah.
I thank you. This is
What is that called?
it's called expialidocious.
Okay, of course.
Yep. And this is au revoir. And
Okay.
this is just San Marino blue. So I do,
Okay.
I probably dye more variegated and speckled yarn than anything.
Okay.
To me, doing solids and tonals is
Uh-huh.
somewhat boring, but
Okay.
necessary.
Of course.
Um, but believe it or not, sometimes getting a good solid or a tonal
Solid
is more
is,
challenging than doing anything else.
of course,
Because
and
because
you have to
it's
be
you have to know
repeatable.
what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Exactly. Yeah, if not, it's a different shade, like even a slight different shade, it's just a totally different
And
yarn.
things happen in nature of hand dyeing.
Yeah.
Is you will have that. You will It will not be. It's
Yeah.
not like, I'm sorry, my cat is here and she's meowing
Aw.
at me, but
Yeah.
because it's only been 2 hours since I've last pet her and held her.
Oh,
um
yeah. No,
but
I took. Hmm.
then it's just the nature of hand dyed. Hand dyed
Oh,
means you're not going to get the exact same thing twice.
yeah.
You're just
Right.
not. And anybody who expects that from a hand dyer is really not understanding the process,
The
and
process.
why this is it truly
Yeah.
is an art. It is, we don't have ginormous vats and machinery that help us get a very
Yeah.
consistent solid dye into a
Right.
yarn,
Hmm.
like these large companies do. So it's just not done that way. And
Right.
I think the smaller of the operations that you are, it's probably
The
even more challenging sometimes. But
variations.
also,
Yeah.
depending on your volume, depending on a lot of different factors, will change that. And sometimes it's just you're having a bad day, or maybe sometimes it's just not it's just not working out for you to that day. Trust me, there are many a times that I'm like, oh crap, what the hell did I just make?
It's
And
one of those
sometimes you
days.
have to stop and you have to cleanse and clear
Yeah,
and say, okay, close the door, come back tomorrow. And
exactly.
and that's what you do.
Yeah, a step away, and then reset and
Yes,
restart.
absolutely.
So, what are you working on? Any project for your own knitting fun at the moment?
I am. So right now, where is it? It's on this side. So I almost always have socks on the go.
Mm,
Um, and so this is a sock that I started, I think, a week or two ago. It's from
okay.
my colorway that I did for the Aurora
Nice.
Borealis. So
Yeah.
that's what I
Okay.
call this. I call this Aurora B.
Okay.
And so
I love it.
I mainly am a vanilla sock knitter.
Okay.
I think I knit for the process more than anything else. It's not really the
Right.
final product; it's the process.
Yeah.
Um, I currently have probably over 20 whips,
Okay. On
and
your
I
needle.
think
Yeah.
that's a lot.
No, I know people who has not 196 or
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't feel so bad now. I feel normal now.
something. But hey,
But I
it. Everyone has their own style, so I'm not judging.
yes. Oh, absolutely. I've done some pattern socks and things that haven't been finished. They're all kind of there. There's a big
Right.
pile of stuff over there.
We all
Um,
have those files.
yes, I love knitting shawls. I am definitely a shawl
Okay.
knitter.
Okay.
So
So
oh,
you
this is
like
another new
big
bag.
shawl? Oh, beautiful.
I do. This is another
Okay.
little bag that I have available. So I am working on a study hall shawl, but out of DK yarn.
Okay. I love
So
those colors.
this
Are
is
those brown kind of
it is
ish
variegated. It's
area?
kind of silver tone and then a variegated yarn. This was my
Okay.
sweater weather colorway from a year,
Swear the
I
weather.
think a year ago.
Okay.
Um, it's kind of blues and browns and greens and purples
Yes.
and golds, and it's a very highly variegated yarn.
Okay.
This pattern, the study hall shawl, is a great pattern for
Uh huh.
showcasing a variegated yarn. I will
Variegated.
show you a
That makes
fingering version
sense.
of it finished.
Okay.
So this is a fingering version of the study hall shawl. It's a free pattern actually. It's by Sarah from Imagine Landscapes. So
Oh,
this is
that is
what it looks
beautiful.
like finished.
Okay. So
So it's a great
is
way to showcase. So it has, it has a lot of garter stitching, and then you get into a kind of
mosaic?
a mosaic
Yes.
knitting,
Okay. It
and
looks
then you
mosaic.
finish with this kind of basket weave at the bottom.
Yeah.
Um,
I love it.
so this is in the fingering. So it
Yeah.
just takes maybe a half a skein of maybe a little more than half a skein of a solid, and then
Uh huh.
most of a full skein of a variegated. And
Okay.
it is a great way to
Oh, that's
showcase,
yeah.
So, but I said I want a larger, chunkier
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
version. So I cast on a
The DK.
DK weight
Uh huh. Yeah.
and just knit until I finish it.
Nice. Well, that is really good. So, we are almost an hour. I
Okay.
promised you it's only gonna take 30 minutes, and it's already doubled. But
I
before we
jabber.
go, yeah,
Yes.
before we go, you are in New Orleans. I have to ask you this question: favorite food?
Okay.
You can
I
mention 10 food or items.
Well, I'll be more generic. I love
Okay.
seafood, so I do eat
Oh.
seafood often.
Oh, hold on, hold on. I have a friend. Oh, just a second. I'm recording. Yeah, yeah. I'll be there. Sorry, sorry. My friend just visit. Yeah, please go ahead. Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, seafood. I love seafood.
Yeah.
I certainly didn't get as heavy and big as I am without eating good food here in New Orleans.
Okay.
If you
Where
were a
where in New
foodie,
Orleans you? Uh huh.
aware in New Orleans, I
Yeah.
mean, anywhere. If it's
Okay.
busy, it's a good place. Okay, the
Okay.
places you don't want to enter are anywhere where they're begging you to come in and eat because
Because no
that
one is
means
eating there.
there's nobody in there eating. If
I
there's a
just
line to get in or it's a full
That's
restaurant, there's
good.
only one table available. Guess what? Go.
Yeah. I
Um,
just Okay, go ahead.
uh, Seafood is my number one go to. Like I do love that, but there are many places here that do a lot of traditional New Orleans kind of menus, and they have
Uh,
their own thing. There's a lot of deep fried here, but I try to stay away from that these days.
mhm. Mhm.
But we us locals, I consider myself a local now, but I've been here 24
Of,
years, so I am a local.
yeah.
Anyway, we have
Yeah.
our favorite places that we go to, and
Okay. Oh,
you know,
no, I the last time I visited New Orleans was March for
okay.
a conference. My background is chemical engineering, chemistry, chemical engineering. So there was an American Chemical Society conference, and I have a friend. I think you know him, who lives in New Orleans, Keenan Goldsmith.
Yes, I've met Keenan. Yes.
So Keenan took me to the non-touristy places to eat and to hang out, and then I also found a really good Indian restaurant that is being voted or in the candidate for James Beard Award.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's
We
like an elevated. So I was so surprised how amazing it is. Yeah.
we have a lot. I mean, people talk about New York or L.A. or
Yes.
these
Hmm.
places, as being hotspots for foodies, and New Orleans is definitely a hotspot for foodies.
It is crazy.
There is a lot of innovation that happens here. There are definitely a lot of award-winning restaurants and chefs. And there's a lot of very historical restaurants. I mean, we are home to one of probably the oldest. I think it's one of the oldest restaurants in the country. And
Uh huh.
there's lots of different history and lots of claims to fame. But
Uh
when
huh.
whether you believe it or not is a whole different story of where you come from.
Yeah. No,
There are
we
lots of other places in the world that are a lot older
of
than us.
of course. It's always nice to claim things, but yeah, no, I enjoy eating in around New Orleans. We even went to a Waffle House one time because we cannot get into this really popular fried chicken. What is that popular
Yes.
fried chicken? The
Oh,
historical one.
there are a dime a dozen, but there's lots
Uh
there's lots of fried chicken
yes.
here.
But yeah, so we did not know there was like even make
Yeah.
reservation for a fried chicken place. We
Yes.
were like,
Oh,
"What?"
they get
But
popular. They get very
I
popular.
know. Well, Rick, it's really nice talking to you. And again, for everyone who is watching or who wants to join the Pride Pod Mal, please uh, go back and visit all these amazing queer makers, and pick up their design, their yarn, their project bags, and then enjoy the make along. And at the end of the month I will pick a winner. So if you just put in your Instagram hashtag PridePodMal and where you coming from, if you're coming from multiple podcasts, it's fine. Just add also Be Extra Knitting, so I know where to get the winner. And then yeah, there will be the project back from Brick, there will be yarn from Cesium Yarn, and then there will be a design pattern from Julie Pecco from Boston. So Rick, thank you again for your
You're
time.
welcome. Thank
I
you.
hope to continue linking up with you, and maybe one day we'll meet up in one of the SAF or even the Dallas fiber part, because I would like to go back to Texas. I went to Texas A&M as an undergrad,
Oh, wonderful.
so I would like to check it
The
out.
Dallas Fort Worth Fiber Fest is amazing. It is
Oh
wonderful.
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, their classes are wonderful as well. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's
awesome.
easy
All
to
right.
fly in and out of.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, Dallas is really easy to go, just like Houston. So yeah. But anyway, I'll talk to you soon. But
Thank
enjoy your
you.
weekend. Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you too.
Bye.
Happy Pride. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
happy Pride. Bye.